taught some of these in the past. I am very excited to be joined by Alysia Rissling, who is a Canadian Olympic athlete. Full disclosure, Alysia and I have worked together in therapy, so she knows that we're doing this. That's a fair comment, isn't it? Yeah, it's not. We've worked together, and I've used a reference from Alysia in the past, so there is an openness about her having received therapy. So hopefully it's okay for us to have a bit of a conversation. So if you wouldn't mind, what do we need to know about you that is relevant for the tale of your journey through hypnotherapy?
Yeah. Well, I was an Olympic bobsled athlete for 10 years. I was a pilot, which means I'm the one who drives the sled down the track. And actually, Alan has that similar experience. And I've always kind of been a very headstrong person. I've played a lot of sports my whole life. I was a basketball and track and field athlete through university before I made the switch into this sport. And if you don't know bobsled, as a pilot, your mental game is way more important than your physical game, because you're the one that actually controls the sled down the track, which can be very dangerous sometimes. You're responsible for the people that are in the sled with you. And here in Canada, we have the fastest track in the world. It's called Whistler. It was the host of the 2010 Olympic Games and my home track. And in my 8th year of piloting, after driving I think 9 different tracks across the world between I'd been to the Olympics already in Korea, all over Europe, and the 4 North American tracks. I discovered a curve in Whistler that had never bit me before, and it's called 50-50. And it's called 50-50 because the first 10 sleds that went down the track, 50 of them didn't make it through that corner. And my whole career, I knew that corner was difficult, but I had never had a problem with it until my 8th year of driving. And the season we had ridiculously fast ice. We were hosting the World Championships. It's when the speed record went down. Speed record, by the way, is 156 kilometers an hour, which I think is around 94 or 5 miles per hour.
You get a speeding ticket for it. If you do that on the motorway here and they catch you, you get disqualified for driving that. And probably important to point out that the driver of a bobsleigh doesn't have access to brake. There is not the person in the back of the sled has the brakes, right? So you just go.
I crashed there once, which turned into a crash there the next run, and then it turned into 7 crashes over the course of the season. And what I had been working with my own mental health athletic performance coach through services available to Olympic athletes, and we couldn't really get through that overwhelming panic that I had, and there was a little bit of a worry that my career might be over because I couldn't get over this corner. I was blacking out when I was going through it. It was disaster. And what we kind of diagnosed myself with was PTSD. And I knew that regular, we'll call it regular therapy, just talking through it was not a significant amount of action. And I didn't even know what hypnotherapy was before I had a conversation. I was introduced to Alan, and really, really, really glad we went down that route, because the progress that we made through the summer before I had to get back in the track and do my tryouts there the next season made all the difference in the world.
And I think probably also worth saying I'd been through a similar experience of being in some big races. And we say that we drive the sled and we control the sled, but there's points when we're clearly not in control, and it's pretty. A great Canadian bobsleigh driver once explained it as everyone's like a car crash. So if you imagine for Alysia to be having 8 car crashes, 7 in the course of a season, which is 4 months in effect, isn't it? Is a bad time.
It was a short amount of time. It was within the bulk of it was in 5 weeks actually. So it was disastrous.
Yeah. And you can just imagine the effect that would have on, if you're driving the car, especially if you're driving a car and you have 7 or 8 crashes in the space of 5 weeks, you do kind of question yourself. And to me, I'm assuming it's the same, is you're responsible for the person in the back. They can't brake until you get to the bottom. They just have to roll with the sled. And when you drop them on your head, we kind of, you know what you sign up for, but it does have an impact on you that way, doesn't it? So it's interesting. I don't think we ever discovered or just talked about it as a PTSD, that way around. Good work, Alan. New to the industry. So that is an interesting slant to put on it. So having been through that, I reached out and talked to Alysia and said, look, literally feel your pain and wonder if I can help. So taking you back, what do you remember anything of your initial reaction of, I'm hoping you checked me out with people. I said we had contacts in common, so I'm hoping you checked me out. But was the idea of hypnotherapy popping up, did that come as a surprise? Did that seem like an appropriate fit for what you were going through?
Well, when you first explained it to me, it made sense to me, but I had no idea what it was. So not only did I have to check you out, I actually had to look up hypnotherapy and realize that it was actually a certifiable training resource for my brain or type of therapy in general. I had no idea. I'd never heard of it prior. Sounded a little bit woo-woo to me. So definitely wouldn't lie. It was very skeptical at first. Before I decided to actually take the leap and give it a try.
Now, that's kind of interesting. One of the questions we've asked our therapist that we've been talking to was, what's your earliest memory or exposure to hypnotherapists? And I was talking to Jim Kellner, the last recording that I did, and he is a stage hypnotist. So he does the whole turn me into a Beyonce type of thing. And in that conversation, one we've had earlier, I think my personal first exposure to hypnotherapy or hypnosis was something like Scooby-Doo. And if it wasn't for you meddling kids, I would have got away with it. And so I can completely understand why if you weren't familiar with hypnotherapy, that it could come as a bit of a surprise for somebody suggesting that was the way out. So how did you find it? As a true layperson, but somebody with a familiarity of sports psychology and the literal application, it's like you say, it's an incredible mind game getting a piece of equipment down. What's the average track length? About a mile, isn't it? Somewhere just under a mile.
Yeah, about that. Yeah.
And you've got usually sort of 14 to 20 corners in that time. It's a really busy time. There's no time to think while you're doing it. It's all about being. So you've got that as a background, and then how did you actually find the process of hypnotherapy?
Process itself was I thought it was actually a very significant undertaking. Like, it wasn't something that you just like gradually notice. It was actually like a huge swing of emotions, and it was almost like a dramatic change right from day one. Day one, I think we were mostly talking and getting to know each other, and then when we finally went through the first initial hypnotic language part, that the everything from the crazy dreams to the thing I tell people the most is the journey we went on. That had resonated with me the most is I expected my goal was that I could get back in a bobsled, be traveling at top speed of the track, and regardless of what the track conditions were, I was going to be confident that I was going to still remain in the zone and be able to focus and use my eyes to actually subconsciously get through the corner, because like you said, it's hard to make decisions when you're going that fast. But the biggest, most welcome surprise was how much my life actually changed after, because I changed the way I think about myself. So in turn, that has changed some of my understanding about why I make the decisions I make, not just on the bobsled track, but in terms of real life decisions as well.
Without oversharing, is there anything that you could give us an example of through that? That sounds amazing and nice for me to hear.
Yeah.
So that's very cool. Is there anything else that you could share on that?
Yeah, I think I don't, without having like a direct example without being too deep. So we kind of went back and realized why I was experiencing such a that anxiety and overwhelmingness, and what emotion was that significantly linked to. And basically what, after weeks of going through this, we kind of realized that it's I had like an overwhelming fear of embarrassment, of not living up to my potential, and but that was a fear stigmatized or attached to what other people thought of me, not what I thought about myself. And I never actually took the time to explore what I actually thought about myself, or and I realized that actually what other people think of me is the reason why I make a lot of the decisions, how I behave sometimes in front of people, why I don't stand up for myself sometimes in front of people, and why I chose certain career paths. It's, well, it's because it's what my, maybe what my parents thought, what I thought my parents wanted me to do, or rather than really truly exposing and doing what I wanted to do. And that came into play in relationships and the people I was dating as well. Yeah.
Interesting. It's one of those ones where it's fantastic, but also obvious, isn't it? It's like
Mm-hmm.
you are this sports person. Sports, by definition, is a comparison against a clock, a measurement, or another person.
Yeah.
You were in a team environment where team places were up for grabs. So you are forced to look at how you perform. But yeah, that's kind of obvious and cool that then you start going, well, hang on, how does this generalize out into the rest of my life? That is incredibly interesting and I think possibly useful. So I guess for people that are listening in, so you made it back into a sled.
Made it back into a sled, and I made it down that track, no problem. It was a lot of visual exercises that we were doing as well, in terms of, it's not like I was just coasting through the summer and then I was fine when 5 months later, but when I got back in the sled, and that anxiety was still there, don't get me wrong, but I was confident. I almost felt more confident because I knew that I had put the work in, and trust that the work was done mentally, to be able to have the confidence when I got in to make the right way down. And I did have the advantage of getting back to the track, and the track being a little bit slower thanks to ice conditions. So it helped that I'd done probably 1,500 mental runs throughout the course of the off season, both with visual cues, watching POVs, but also just in my mind going through with some of the hypnotic language we use while listening to it, while remaining my heart rate calm, and I was able to have 2 more successful seasons on the track.
And if I may,
Mm-hmm.
the seasons that you had were both fantastic and possibly not what you wanted. So I know for a fact you had a brilliant season, and also missed out on your goal, which was the follow-up Olympics. So how did that sit with, in effect, the new version of you?
Yeah, that's a good but tough question. So in the season after we went through this whole thing, it turned into a global pandemic, and
Possibly
we
not
know
related.
that. And I actually I had to miss it. It wasn't because of my mental game. It was because of a calf tear that I had sustained. I had missed the season prior, and it everything seemed to be stacked against me. The team was pretty obvious that they wanted to pursue a younger generation, and I showed up in the best shape that I've been in, better than the 2017-18 season, the prior Olympics. And I just didn't get the opportunity to prove it direct head to head against the other people on my team. They blamed COVID. Everyone knew that it was this change. And so all I could do was go on tour on the B circuit, do the absolute best that I can, and hope that someone notices, or just be ready in case somebody else got sick or injured. And I did my job. I went back on that Whistler track. I won 6 out of 6 races that I did on it, and qualified for the Olympics actually on the B circuit, which is a little bit harder to do. So that's how successful my season was in terms of gold medals, but they still didn't send me. And I think a lot of people expected me to spiral. I think a lot of people, because I had a history of doing that, especially when I retired from sport the first time, went into a very dark place. And I think a lot of people expected me to be way more externally upset than it was, and maybe do some dumb things, which I didn't do, because I knew, as much as it hurt to not be selected to return to the Olympics, I did everything that I was supposed to do. I did to a T. I came back stronger. I came back a better driver. I came back more calm, a better leader. And physically I was better as well. I was stronger. So it's kind of tough when you've done everything right, but the acceptance of knowing that there was nothing that I could really change, I was able to accept that. I think it still hurts. It wasn't easy. And I know, looking back, that I have nothing to regret on that. And I think a lot is attributed to that same skill, that I can actually make decisions for myself and feel confident in them.
That's amazing. That's so cool to hear. Now, I know for a fact that you've been involved in events, and part of that was that you had to recall a tough time and how you got out of it. And you mentioned this and hypnotherapy. So how does it feel? That's a big thing to share, that you went through that and that you got help. So how does it feel? How does it sit with you, telling the story to what is in effect complete strangers?
How does it sit with me? I have no problem. I tell everyone because it was just I thought it was just such a significant piece of my life. And I really am like proud that I've gone through. I know a lot of people, it's way cooler, if you will, right now to go through therapy. I think a lot more people accept that it's a good thing to do, and a lot of people are realizing it's common language now that we all have trauma. So just trauma is different to everyone, so that's not taking away from some people who had, what we'll call privileged upbringings, like I did. But the journey of actually doing that internal work, I think, is becoming more popular. So when I tell people that hypnotherapy is an option, and what my experience and how I rave about it, people are very genuinely curious about it. Again, it's not something that we really know about. It's not in the mainstream media. It's not something that's commonly accepted. So people, I find, have a very curious interest. They were like, well, tell me more about that. And that example you're talking about, Alan, I speak quite often, and then this one was at a female sports summit. And I was at a table full of the coaches so if you will, the older women, which is funny because a lot of them are my age and some of them are even younger, but
more experienced,
yeah. Yeah. Some of them were showing genuine interest, like, can you tell me more about that? And I think one of them I even introduced you to. I'm not sure if they came through, but yes.
Yeah, and not to tell tales out of class, but it sounds like your story completely resonated with her own journey. So if I may, and you're probably the best person to do this, what language do you use when you come across incredibly enthusiastic and comfortable with your story, which is really nice? So what sort of language do you use that to tell the story about hypnotherapy, because of, as you say, that whole woo-woo, and let me just go check that on Google. So how do you make it accessible, A, for yourself, and B, in telling your story?
I think to how I kind of, well, I do start it off as woo-woo, and because I have to be perfectly honest to people. I'm like, listen, like, it sounds like something far-fetched, but I personally went through this experience, and I can vouch for it, that it was and how I word it is, it's really kind of more a directive conversation with your subconscious, where you're that kind of unaware part that doesn't involved in your higher day-to-day thinking, the voice that you're talking to yourself. It's kind of feeling, because I feel like that day-to-day part, you know who you are, you know your personality traits are, that's all your frontal cortex, but it's really talking to that subconscious and helping that voice in your head reprogram itself, or at least for me, what I felt was it was a better conscious understanding of how my subconscious worked.
Ooh, nice. I recently heard it described as the conscious part, the ego, is the person sitting on the elephant. And if they hope to go right and the elephant goes right, then they go, yeah, I did that. But actually, if the elephant's going left, you're going with it. Mm-hmm. And I wonder if for both of us on our bobsleigh crash journey, we had a plan, right? And at no point do you go, and I'll just dump myself on my head traveling at 140 kilometers an hour. But the elephant decides that's what's happening today. Mm-hmm. And then again, so we try and take responsibility for it. We try and go, well, it must be my fault, but actually it's the elephant. In the room. Nice double whammy on that one. So that's interesting. And so generally, I guess if you told this story more than once, you're not getting kicked out of the room instantly. What sort of reactions have you had? Obviously, somebody contacted me, so that's very positive. But do you find that some people do just hear woo-woo and start backing slowly away from you? Or
no, I think it's genuine curiosity. And Alan, I've actually given your number to many people who have asked. I don't know, it's just a matter of whether or not they follow through.
Exactly.
And choosing to go down that path, right? It is an investment in yourself. You have to invest time, you have to invest money, but I think it's genuine curiosity, because I think everyone kind of has that one thing in their life that they feel blocked about. Yep. Well, I think most people that I'm speaking to, that's why they're there, because I'm speaking in some form of motivational context. And I think if it resonates with them where they feel like they're getting in their own way, and that's another way how I would describe it, and that's what I was describing what I was doing to myself, is that I think it resonates with them, and they explore it for a minute or two for sure in their head of like, is that something I should be doing?
Yeah. Awesome. I thank you. This has been amazing, and hopefully incredibly useful, because I think we overuse sports analogies, but they are a metaphor for life, right? We all try our best and we point ourselves in the direction of an arena, and there are a significant number of people in your audience that you care about the opinions, and then there are some people in your audience who we don't care about their opinions. And as you said, perhaps putting too much emphasis on some people in your audience, but I think it's enough. There's enough crossover. That's why these sports metaphors are so useful, is so many people can see themselves in their own hero's journey almost. So thank you so much for your time. Thank you for sharing so openly. Really appreciate it. And it's been lovely talking to you.
Thank you for having me. I'm happy to. Thanks for all the work we did together.
My pleasure.